You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma Podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. A huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is presented by Citizens Bank of Edmond. Citizens Bank of Edmond has been serving Edmond since 1901. They pride themselves on investing in the community and are here for all your personal and business banking needs. For more information, go to mycitizens.bank and follow them on Instagram at citizensedmond, as well as go bank there, because I bank there too. It's been a fantastic personal experience for me. I've had my podcast account there now, my podcast business account there now for 4 years now, I think, and it's been fantastic. So definitely worth your time. They're a great group of people, and they're always there to answer the phone when I forget my password, because I seem to forget it daily. So yeah, go to Citizens Edmond and check them out. It's been awesome. This episode is brought to you by the Dog House OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my 2 pups, and the Dog House have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my 2 golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Banks, where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Dog House. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode. Got a fantastic episode for you today. Gives me great pleasure to introduce Mr. Jared Black to the podcast from Gavin's Legacy. Jared, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to come share some stories.
Thanks for having me.
So you're a pilot still.
Yes, sir.
Been one for a very long time. One thing I didn't ask you when we met last week was what's your call sign? Are you allowed to say that or not?
So like my tactical, like Maverick Goose kind of thing? So it's Slush.
Slush.
Not quite as cool as Iceman.
Okay.
That's how it was delivered.
What's the story behind Slush?
Oh, man. You asked if there's things we can't talk about. So the storytelling of a call sign usually involves a fighter pilot's bar.
Yeah.
And some brew. I will tell you the short version of it, I guess, which is fine. As a young enlisted guy, I had some pretty cool cars. I had a Corvette that I had restored, and I had Aviator as a custom license plate, and I was pretty proud of myself. I was the 4th generation pilot at that point. My great-grandfather flew the Curtiss Jenny at the end of World War I. My grandfather flew the B-52, and the KC-135 in Vietnam. My dad was a KC-135 navigator. My uncle was a KC-135 and an AWACS pilot. And I was a brand new private pilot civilian. And I thought aviator would be cool on the license plate. So that kind of sets
context,
it.
Yeah.
I end up going to pilot training, and this is going to get me in trouble. And I go to pilot training, and a buddy of mine took a picture of me much younger than I am now, a little skinnier, a lot more hair, on the wing of a T6, and submitted that along with another picture of me with Gavin in the cockpit of an A10 up in Boise, and submitted those to a radio station in Boise, Idaho for the Hottest Daddy contest. True story. I didn't know that she did that.
Love that.
Yep. So I get a call from a lieutenant colonel, which there's a possibility that he will hear the story, so I'll probably leave his name out of it, but he went by Donut. He calls me up and he's like, "What the absolute heck are you doing down there in pilot training?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Dude, you're all over the news, and Hottest Daddy, you need to be focusing on pilot training. What the heck are you doing?" I'm like, "Sir, I am so sorry. I have no idea what you're talking about."
Yeah.
So I get off the phone with him, and then immediately call her and said, "What have you done?" I ended up winning and got a $2,000 shopping spree certificate at the local mall. So I just gave that to her, and that was, I believe, the last conversation that her and I had together. Anyways, do well in pilot training, do well in all of the other military parts of the flying. They sent us to a program called IFF. It's Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals, where it's our first introduction to being a fighter pilot. Having to fly while flying, obviously forward, but you're looking backwards for bandits on you and stuff, and that stuff you've seen in the movies.
Yeah.
And then from there on to ultimately to fly the A10 at Davis-Monthan for the school down there, and then do well, right? I get back to Boise, where I become an operational fighter pilot there, and during that training, I do fairly well in that. And one of the things that I'm able to do, for whatever reason, I can see the air-to-air picture pretty good. I remember going out with a guy named Kingman, a very famous fighter pilot back in the day. He actually has a couple of rides with Chuck Yeager in the F4. If you're familiar with Chuck Yeager or not, he's the most probably famous pilot of all time. But anyways, we went out 2v2, so 2 F-16s out of Montana against 2 A-10s, and long story short, we beat them up pretty bad. And any F-16 pilot would argue that the A-10 should not be doing that to the F-16. So we cleaned them up pretty good, and through that there came a kind of a sense that I was fairly good at the air-to-air picture. Not saying that I'm God's gift to anything, but I was good at the air-to-air picture. So that brings in Top Gun. Everyone has seen Top Gun. Sure. Iceman, right? He's ice cold, doesn't make mistakes. Well, I obviously made mistakes, so not quite Iceman. Therefore, Slush is the name they gave me. Nice. That's the short. That's the short version. That's the short of it.
I'm sure there's a lot more context that you can talk about off the podcast.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a great experience flying A-10s up there in Boise with those guys.
Yeah.
You bet.
So obviously you kind of referenced it a little bit. Very decorated. Seems like family history in aviation. It seems like the decision was made up for you from a young age. But before we get into that, if it was there ever a doubt that you weren't going to become a pilot and fly?
No.
So you just knew straight away. That's what I want to do.
You bet. I remember sticking my hand out of the window as a kid, and letting the wind manipulate my hand. I was like, "Oh man, this is it." And my dad would come home in his flight suit, and there's always talks about flying. It was it, and that's the way that it was with Gavin too. He knew from day one he wanted to be a pilot.
Yeah. You also mentioned that your granddad, great granddad, and dad, like they flew kind of bigger planes. Sounds
Well, except for the first one, the Curtiss Jenny is that's still the old.
like a fighter
That's still the old
back in
wood.
the day?
Well, that's
Okay.
World War One.
Yeah.
So this was 1919. So 1917 to 1919. So the airplane had really only been around for
Okay.
10 years, 12 years, right?
Yeah.
So it was very, very new. This is the kind of plane, it's a biplane where the guy in the front has the controls and the guy in the back is the gunner.
Has a machine gun. Just
Right, so it's
doing-
like
yeah.
it's like one of those planes. So very small. I mean,
Right.
big planes didn't exist back then.
Okay.
You bet. And then yes, after that, we're all large
Yeah.
planes. So I would be the first fighter pilot, if you will.
What made you want to go the fighter pilot route versus sitting in the back of an AWAC or flying a B-52?
You know what? I don't have an answer to that. I just always knew that was going to be it.
Yeah.
So we lived at Mountain Home at the time in Idaho, and about 40 miles up the road was the Air National Guard base that had A10s. So I got to see those all the time. The F-15s, F-16s that flew out of Mountain Home. I'd see them overhead all the time. So just a lot of exposure, I guess, to the fighter side, and I just figured it'd be awesome.
Yeah. So you go through school. When's your first lesson? When are you jumping in the plane, and when does Dad kind of say, "Okay, now's the time that we can. If you want to do this, let's do it."
So my very first lesson, my grandfather bought
cool.
for me on my 16th birthday.
Is 16 like the age you have to get to?
No.
Okay.
You can, as a civilian, you can solo at 16.
Okay.
17 is the earliest that you can get a license.
Okay.
But no, on my 16th birthday, I remember my grandpa handing me my first logbook, with a happy birthday on it, and inside was a certificate for my first flight. So he started that off for me. Of course, my parents supported it as well. And I went down the road at a little Cessna. It was a 150, very small airplane, too small for the two of us that were in it. Looking back, and I remember on the very first flight. It's going to sound like I'm making this up, but I'm not. My very first flight ever, and it was only like a 45-minute flight. The guy that I was with, the instructor, he has since passed, but he fell asleep. Like, I'm not kidding. We're up there flying at like, I don't know, a couple thousand feet. And I'm just out there doing some turns. He had me call turns around a point and S turns. To basically just follow this road and do some turns around it. And I look over and he's, hey, I'm fairly confident that I can keep us in the air.
Right.
But I have no idea how to land. I've never landed an airplane before. Yeah. Could I have figured it out? I guess if he wouldn't have woken up, we would have found out. But yeah, I had forgotten about that until probably just now. But yeah, he fell asleep on me. And then really from there, it was I flew very sporadically. It's even more expensive than what it was when I went through in the late 90s. But yeah, I eventually enlist in the military and become an aircraft mechanic. So I start that first. My uncle
out of high school.
Out of high school, okay. Yeah. So my uncle, he's a Southwest captain right now, and he flew the AWACS here, and he gave me some advice. He said, "Hey man, Boise's right up the road. They've got A10s up there. If you wanna fly those, this is." And he gave me advice on how to do that, and I've shared that advice with countless people since then on how to do it. And Gavin was going to follow those exact same footsteps. I flew him up to Idaho, and he met with in the same recruiting office that I went through, and he was going to enlist with them and have them put him through college, because to be an Air Force pilot, you have to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I enlisted, and I worked on the A10 during the day and went to school at night. Finished my bachelor's degree. I really pushed hard. It's not going to sound real. It doesn't sound real to most people, but from start to finish, I did my bachelor's degree in 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
While working.
Yeah.
Full time.
Full time. So the military gave me about 32 credits to go towards it. So I basically had the first year kind of taken care of starting out. And then I went through Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, they had a satellite office based out of Mountain Home Air Force Base there. So I went in there, and it was a long drive too. It was from the base to from both bases. 'Cause I was at Gowan Field in Boise working on the A10, and then I would go to Mountain Home Air Force Base for school. It was about an hour and 15-minute drive. Yeah. And then I'd go to school until late, and then from there I lived in a little town called Nampa, which was north. Hour and 45 minutes home. So it was very, very long days, and it was six days of school straight, so Monday through Saturday, and then every other Sunday. So every other week was 7 days straight through.
Yeah.
But it was worth it. I don't like school, although I've been basically a professional in aviation education for my whole career. But yeah, I went through and knocked it out fairly quickly. And then the war in Iraq kicked off. Okay. So I was actually in Operation Southern Watch with our A10s in a base called Al Jaber in Kuwait. Okay. In 2001. Actually late 2000. No, I'm getting my years wrong. 2000 at the end of 2002 through the first part of 2003, doing Operation Southern Watch. Basically, the A-10s would fly, and they would make sure that Saddam Hussein wasn't doing anything stupid in Iraq, right? And we had the A-10 mission, so close air support, making sure his armor wasn't coming down, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was a maintainer, I was a crew chief, so I was there for that, and then we actually kicked off the war. So they shut the base down. Basically, they turned off all comms, all cell phones, everything. And then we kicked off the war. So we pushed into Iraq. The team that I was with we were the first Air Force enlisted personnel to set foot in Iraq. Wow. In 2003.
Yeah.
And we set up a forward operating base to where we brought the A-10s in, fueled them up, so that they could fly into Iraq and fuel up with us, and then fly further forward to do missions.
Yeah.
So that was pretty intense. We had 26 missed launches when they were launching those. What were those big? Those big Scud missiles. So we kept having to don all of our gear for that. Danny was actually out there in the Herc at the time flying. Yeah. So we've talked about this, but there's possibilities that I was actually on his airplane while he was there at 100 feet, dodging, AAA coming up at us and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty wild, but yeah, I did that. Then I came home from that, finished up college. I actually finished my last course while I was in Iraq. Yeah. And Kuwait. I think it was microeconomics. So I'm in, they call it MOP level 3. So I'm in all this chem gear, everything except for the mask. I remember being, laying on the ground of one of the offices while one of the missile alerts was going on my laptop, working on microeconomics. It was pretty stupid, but I had to get it done, right? Yeah. And I was married to Gavin's mom. Okay. I would write her notes, and I would stuff them in the refueling door in the A-10 in Iraq, so that when the airplane flew back to Kuwait, my maintenance guys would open up the door, take my letter out, and then get sent back to the States to her. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's
statute of limitations probably gone. That's on probably too, right?
Fine. There was nothing classified about anything.
Yeah.
But that's how I was getting information back to her, and it was obviously before Gavin was born.
Yeah.
Came back from that and continued to work on the flying stuff, and then Gavin was born. Yeah. He was born on October 26th of 2004.
Okay.
That same, within those weeks, I'm not exactly sure what day it would have been, but around the same time that he was born is when I was notified that I was selected for pilot training, for Air Force pilot training. Yeah. And when Gavin was about 6 months old, I went off to get my commission, and then went to pilot training from there.
Okay.
So that made it pretty tough going through pilot training as a single dad. Obviously, I didn't have Gavin with me, but it was very challenging.
So when you were in Iraq the first time you went flying?
I was not.
Okay.
No. My job as a crew chief was to make sure the airplane was
fuel's maintained, ready to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All of the things. I was kind of the coordinator, the director of maintenance, basically making sure that everything was getting done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back up a little bit when you're
Sure.
when you go up to to see the A10s for the first time, or maybe it's before that. And you, like you said, you're in the area, right? You hear that plane coming at you and that whistle. Like, you still get that feeling. You still remember that.
So,
because it's a very distinctive sound.
oh yeah, I mean, those big high bypass turbofans. There's really nothing that sounds like it at all. Yeah, you're right. I remember the first biggest memory that I have of how awesome the A10 was when I was in tech school in Texas. It would have been early 2001, I guess. And they were teaching us how to tow the airplane. And when you tow the airplane, one of the people has to sit in the cockpit to ride the brakes while the other person actually physically tows it. And I always volunteered to be the guy that would sit in the cockpit because I wanted to be a pilot, right? Yeah. So I remember sitting in the cockpit, and it's a fairly large airplane, even though it's a fighter. You're like 12 feet in the air, and you looking down at the back of those wings, and even though someone's towing you, and reach over and push the canopy button, especially if it was cold, and then the canopy would come down, and just sitting there, imagine being a pilot, and having all your buddies make fun of you, which happened a lot, because I had these big dreams of being a fighter pilot, and they're like, "Oh, knock it off, go change the oil. Hey, that one needs a tire." I'm like, "All right, fine, but I still want to fly." So yeah, doing that, and one of the inspirations was from the pilots when they would. The really good pilots would spend time with their maintainers. They take 2 minutes before they took out. They come out and you do the walk around the jet, and I'd always ask, so what are you going to do? And they'd bring out their map. And, hey, we're going to go here. We're going to take out some tanks here. We're going to go find a tanker over here. It's called a fight tank fight. So you fight, and then you go hit a tanker. You go back and fight again. And then when they come back, they obviously the bombs are missing off the bottom, or the bullets are gone or whatever, and those same pilots would then tell you what they just did, and the guys like me who wanted to be them, were all over it, and just
superheroes to you, right?
Oh yeah, just eat it up. And that's one thing I really made sure to do when I was now a pilot, and I was doing combat missions in Afghanistan, and leaving with all this ordnance hanging from the bottom and then coming back empty. Taking that moment for your guys that are on the ground working, to the guys that loaded those bombs. Hey man, I just did this with those bombs. We just saved 2 convoys because you loaded those bombs, because you took the time to go to school to learn how to load those bombs. Backing them up all the way through all of their decisions in life, to where they physically put that bomb on that aircraft for me to deliver it, and save the guys on the ground. So really repaying those workers the way that I was repaid, has shown to really pay dividends, because the more they the more they know about why they're actually doing what they're doing, the harder they work. I had a kid. He was 12 years old. He came out with his elementary, not middle school, whatever that. 12 years old. And I remember he was 12. They came out, and I was a young captain flying the A10s out of Boise, and they brought this school out, and they're like, "Hey, Slush," I was the young guy. "Hey, Slush, go take these kids over and show them the airplane." So I did. I showed them the airplane, talked to them about how cool it was, and all that stuff. And this would have been in 2008 or 9, right? And then in 2015, one of those years, somewhere around in there, I'm in the dentist's office at Vance Air Force Base. I'm pretty sure I was a major at the time, so it would have been around 2015. And there's this young kid, brand new kid, with black leather name tag and butter bars, sitting there, and I leaned over and said, "Hey man, you new here?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm new." So we started talking, and I said, "So what do you want to fly?" He said, "Oh, I want to fly A10s." I'm like, really? That's cool, man. I flew A10s. He's like, yo, really, you did? And then he stopped for a second. He said, do you know a guy named Jared Black? I look at this kid, and I think he's screwing with me.
Yeah.
Because my name tag is right here. I look down. I look back at him. I pointed at my name tag, and he did like this double take. He's like, when I was 12 years old in Boise, Idaho, you told me how cool it was to do this, and I'm here because of you.
Yeah.
I mean, that just made my day, man.
So
how cool was that? So
that's awesome. Yeah, those are the stories you want to hear, right?
Yeah.
The stories you're like, because I'm sure there was kids that come by here and there, and you're just like, yeah, this is never going to happen. But maybe that one day someone goes through everything and gets back. And
Sure.
You see them, and you're like, you're the reason, or one of the reasons.
Sure.
Like, I got a cool memory of that. It's crazy.
Yeah, you bet. I try and tell my story to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Do
many people go the same route that you did then, or is it kind of unconventional?
No, it is so unconventional.
Is that why they gave you so much crap for it?
No, I don't. I think they gave me. You talking about the
your fellow mechanics at the time?
No, they were just giving me crap for it because we were bros.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't think there was anything personal or vindictive about it. I think that's just what guys do.
Yeah, of course.
But my peers, when I tell them how I got in the cockpit, it floors them. They're like, how? The traditional way is to go and either go through ROTC or just a standard college or through an academy and spend 4 to 5 years getting a degree and then applying, right? All of that stuff. And then once they go to pilot training, they have absolutely no idea what they're going to fly, right? They have to compete. Yeah. Well, I was coming from Boise, so Boise hired me to be one of their pilots. So when they sent me to Air Force pilot training, I was already going to fly the A10. Yeah. I had to meet certain benchmarks. Like I couldn't be in the bottom of the class. I had to be in the top half of T6s and the top 25% of T38s to be able to qualify for it, which of course I had to work very hard for. But yeah, the standard peer of mine on the active duty side, they all wish that they would have known that was a process that they could have done. So I take a lot of time to educate people on that.
How many people have you convinced to move to Boise just to get close to the A10?
Well, probably a few.
Right? Like to do that same thing.
Sure, but they're all over the country, right? I mean, Dallas Fort Worth has F-16s. Yeah. I
mean A10 specifically.
Oh, just A10 specifically. Yeah. Probably quite a few. And Boise is one of the harder squadrons to get into because it's such a nice location and the mission. So it was like when I applied and competed for my pilot board, there was 125 people that applied for one position. Yeah. And if I wouldn't have been the guy that just spent 6 months in the desert with them, putting them, because the same pilots that I launched and recovered and worked on their aircraft are the same ones that interviewed me. And that was why my uncle had told me to do this. He said, man, go and be a mechanic at the airplane that you want to fly, learn the airplane, work hard for the pilots. Those pilots are going to be on the pilot board that will ultimately hire you. And when it comes time for them to make the decision, they already know you. They trust you, and as long as you do a good job for them, they're going to want to keep working with you. Right. Yeah. So it worked out great.
Yeah. So you said 04 is when you went to pilot training?
Or early 05.
Early 05.
Yeah.
And that's when you're like, I kind of put in all my work now.
That's
I'm done
right.
Lifting spanners. Like, this is my opportunity.
That's right. Yeah.
Tell me about that moment.
It was surreal. My dad drove me down here to Vance Air Force Base, May of 2005, and we had that same Corvette on a trailer with the aviator and the license plate.
It's a very pilot thing to do, to have a Corvette, right?
I know.
I have another friend of mine who was, he didn't fly, but he was in kind of big planes or whatever, I think a Loadmaster or whatever it was. His name's Dave Guy. He has 2 Corvettes now. It's just a pilot thing. Yeah.
Oh man, if I would have known that the negative attention that I was going to get from it, I don't know. I'd probably still do the same thing because I wasn't doing it to be the cocky, whatever. I've always loved Corvettes. I'll own another one. I just think they're fun. Yeah. I wasn't the guy running around telling everybody that I'm a pilot. But it kind of looked that way because I put aviators on a red license plate, right? So I looking back in hindsight, I will own
giant target in your back.
I will own that. That I put that target there myself. Yeah.
So Dad drives you down.
Yeah,
Show up in Enid, Oklahoma.
Dad drove me down from Boise. So had the truck and the trailer. The Corvette was on the back of it. He drove me down. 2-day drive. This is where I'm going to try not to get emotional. My dad had the moment with me that I wanted to have with my son.
Yeah.
I remember we went to the Class 6 at the base, and we got a 6-pack of beer, and we sat at the lodging there on base that night, and we just drank a couple beers together. And the next morning he left, you know. But it was good. I mean, he taught me so much growing up, and he prepared me for that moment. Yeah.
How old are you that moment?
2005, I was 20. It was a week before my 23rd birthday.
Still a baby then in the grand scheme of things.
Sure.
Right, but you've also been to, been to a war zone.
Right.
Because you obviously didn't, you've done straight out of high school. Like you've grown up in such a short period of time.
I did. Yeah, and that was a difference that I had with most of my peers as well, as they were straight out of college.
Yeah.
And I was straight out of, like you said, a combat enlistment. I had spent time, in Iraq and Kuwait, and running around with an M16, for no reason,
right,
other than to have one. No, I mean there was every reason to have it. It just felt wrong. It was one of those movies that you've seen from Vietnam. Danny's going to get a chuckle out of this, but they landed us at Tiliel Air Base. It would have been, the war kicked off March 16th-ish, 20th, something like that. 3 days into the war, our Chief Master Sergeant, Chief Finicatero, I'll never forget him, short little squatty guy. He's as wide as he was tall, just super neat guy. He comes out and says, all right, who wants to go on a camping trip? I don't know what a camping trip is or what he's talking about, but I love to go camping. I grew up in the woods. I'm like, I'll go. So he's like, all right, grab your your ruck, your whatever, pack up. So we're MOP level 3. We got on a C-130, and as we're getting on there, they hand us one empty magazine, M16, 2 of the cardboard boxes of bullets, and a weapon. As we're getting on this airplane, I'm like, what kind of camping trip are we going on? What the hell is happening? When we get on this airplane, and it takes off, and it's so violent. The flight is so violent because there's so much turbulence. Because we're right off the deck, because they're shooting at us, right? Yeah. Right off the deck. I remember everyone was so sick. People were taking off their boots, which were these real thick rubber chem-resistant boots. They couldn't find anywhere to puke. So they were taking off their boots to puke in their boots. Some guys were smarter than that, and they took their MRE bags, the plastic MRE bags, opened them up. They were dumping their MREs on the ground so they could puke in the bag or in the MRE bags. It was violent. It was terrible. It didn't bother me a bit. I remember I was standing at the little porthole on the side looking out the window while everybody else was vomiting around me. And looking out there, I remember seeing the oil fields were on fire. You could see the smoking tanks and stuff. Yeah. I remember the smell was from all the vomit and the heat. It was horrible. It was horrible. But I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then we land. They opened the door up. They didn't shut down the engines, and it was just straight out of a Vietnam movie. The guy in the back, go, 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 and we're running off with our puke-filled whatever, trying to get off the airplane. And the airplane turns and then goes and leaves, and we're all just looking at each other like, what are we doing? These Army Rangers show up on their four-wheelers and kind of escort us over, and then now the chief can tell us what's going on. All right, hey, we're in Iraq.
This is an exercise.
What the hell? And there's like bombs going out, 2,000 pounders hitting a town called Nasiriyah, just a couple miles away.
You start feeling that in your chest.
Like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of really fun, awesome stories that we had. The Marines broke a tank on their way to Baghdad.
Okay.
They left it there. And we're a bunch of guard guys. We're a bunch of maintainers. We fixed the tank. So it's one of the kind that was a bridge layer. So we actually deployed the bridge and disconnected it so the tank was lighter.
Yeah.
And, here I am, this, 20-year-old kid with a tank, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And me and another guy, and we're driving all over the place. There are these little like mud hut kind of things, and we're just plowing through.
Just ripping around the tank.
The same Army Rangers that greeted us that day greeted us he pulled out in front of us, he waved at us. We popped the lid and we're like, yeah, what's up? He's like, dude, there's mines everywhere. So we turned around, we followed our tracks back, and we were done with that. And then that same night, my buddy and I were watching Super Troopers.
Yeah.
We couldn't sleep because
great movie to watch when you're in a war zone.
There's gunfire and all the stuff, a couple hundred yards away.
Yeah.
You can't sleep.
Right.
We're not the ones engaging in gunfire. We're just the mechanics. Yeah. But so he had a laptop, and we had one set of earbuds, and we were right next to each other, and one was in his ear, one was in my ear, and we're watching Super Troopers. And this face comes out of nowhere, like right in between us, and he grabs the top of the laptop and he closes it really slowly, real dramatically. Same exact guy with the tank, and he's like, there's snipers everywhere. Your faces are glowing. I'm like, ah. So that Army Ranger was our angel, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, we had no idea we were being stupid, but in hindsight, we got away with quite a bit. That was quite the experience, though.
Yes, when 20 years old.
Yeah, that's right.
You look at 20-year-olds now and you're like, oh, yeah, you knew.
We had a blast.
Right? Yeah. Fast forward then, talk to me about kind of dad leaves, you're in Enid, flight training. How long does that take before they put you in an A10?
So pilot training is 13 months,
okay.
Half in the T6, half in the T38. And then you go to IFF, which is another 3 months-ish. And then you're in an A10. So all in all, probably 18 months before you get in an A10.
But the training planes, they're pretty quick planes, right?
So the T6 is a very high performance little airplane. It looks a lot like a P-51 if you're familiar with that. Yeah. It's got 1,100 shaft horsepower. It's tandem, so front seat, back seat. Okay. Student sits in the front, instructor sits in the back. And it'll do anything you want it to. All your upside downs, inside outs. That's when you learn all the base stuff, just how to fly, right? Then you learn navigation, and then you learn formation. So that's when you start doing the first bits of formation flying. And then you get into the T-38, which is a supersonic fighter trainer, basically built in the 60s. And it is like I said, it's supersonic little rocket ship, and it's fast.
What's that feeling like for the first time?
The best way to explain it, and I was a T-38 instructor pilot as well, and I would tell students that this is what it's going to feel like. It's going to feel like once you rotate and you get the gear and the flaps up, it's going to feel like there's a rope hooked onto the back of the airplane, and you are slowly sliding back that rope as the airplane's flying away from you because it's so fast and you're just so behind the airplane. That's what it's going to feel like, and you got to pull yourself back into the cockpit and really grab the reins. But yeah, like for example, when we're doing aerobatics, our entry parameters for a loop is 500 knots, so 600 and something miles an hour is when you would start the loop.
Yeah.
It takes 10,000 feet of vertical altitude, so almost 2 miles.
Wow.
To do the first half of a loop, and then another 2 miles to do the bottom half. So, it's an antique, and it's in the process of getting replaced. But I flew the same T-38s that my grandfather did.
Wow,
that's
cool.
how old they are, and he was the second class to fly T-38s.
Yeah.
After they got rid of the T-33s back in the day.
Yeah. So 18 months later, you reach all the requirements. You study your ass off, and,
That's right.
and you get gifted an A10.
That's that's one way of putting it. Sure.
Gifted the opportunity to fly the A10.
I do. So I show up to Davis-Monthan for the second time.
Yeah.
First
Is that
time
where you wanted to go back to, or did you have a choice?
You mean for location?
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
That's where they do the training.
Okay.
And it's Tucson. I love Tucson. So the first time I was there was when I was an enlisted guy learning how to be a crew chief. We spent a little bit of time in Texas learning on what they called a cold plane, a plane that was not operational.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did our hot training in Davis-Monthan, where we actually worked with actual aircraft, with actual pilots and all that stuff. And so going back there the second time, knowing that instead of strapping a pilot into the airplane, I'm going to be strapped into the airplane. It was, I remember the evening showing up, and there's that scene in Top Gun. It's going to sound so dumb. There's that scene in Top Gun where Maverick is he's on his Ducati or whatever. It was a whatever motorcycle it was, right? I think it was a Ninja. And where he's
the recent Maverick movie.
He did it in both.
Yeah.
So where he shows up on the motorcycle, going down the flight line as if F-14's taking off, and just him looking over and watching it. That's what I felt like showing up. I felt like as I show up, I seen A10 taking off, and I'm like, I am a month and a half away for doing that myself.
You in the Corvette? You were on a motorcycle at the time.
I would have been in the Corvette.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I didn't have a bike down there.
No.
But I do
have bikes too.
I did later on. Yeah. I actually bought a bike while I was there in Tucson.
So you had the moment from the movie.
Well, I never did that, but sure. Yeah. And I never owned that kind of motorcycle. I always had the cruiser styles. I wasn't cool enough to have that kind of a bike, I guess. But and then a month and a half later, so all the ground school and the simulators, and then your first flight flying an A10, as everything else that I'd ever flown was, I always had two people.
Yeah.
Now I'm crawling into an airplane to fly it for the first time completely by myself. Right? Of course, I've got a wingman, and they taxi behind you, and they take off right behind you, and they monitor everything that you do. But you're in there by yourself. And I remember getting strapped in and be like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening. The crew chief I'm talking to him. I'm like, I should be that guy in the ground. What am I doing in this cockpit? We do everything, and I start the first engine. I'm like, holy shit, it's working. Yeah. And I start the second engine, and then they pull a comm cord out, and then I start taxiing. And then the next thing I know, I'm on the runway requesting takeoff, and they give it to me, and I throw the throttles up, and I watch the engine stabilize at 100%, and then I let off the brakes. I'm like, here we go. And then I pull back on the stick, and I get airborne, and gear flaps up, and I'm officially now an A10 pilot. And that was pretty rad. I was a little disappointed on how slow it was. The T-38, when you let off the brakes, about 3 to 4 seconds later, the afterburners would light, and it would be like the hand of God on your chest pushing you back. There was nothing like that in the A10. It was just like, and just going, and I'm used to getting airborne pretty quick in the T-38, and kind of feel like I need to put a paddle out there to help myself along a little bit, and then your first 7 rides are all, they call them, it's an instrument sortie. So you go out, you do very basic stuff. You shoot approaches, you go and do different maneuvers while the other guy's watching you. So you learn the airplane. And then the next 4 rides after that are all air to air. So now you only had 7 rides in the airplane, and now you're flying offensive and defensive. They call it BFM, basic fighter maneuvers. throwing the speed brake out and doing all this stuff from Top Gun, you know, and simulated AIM-9 missile launches and guns attacks and stuff. And so, wow, on your 8th ride, you're doing air-to-air. It's crazy. And then that's 8 through 12. And then on your 13th ride, you fire the gun for the first time. And when that 30 millimeter cannon,
that's on the right at the front on the nose, right?
Yeah. 7 barrels. That's 30 millimeter. They're about this long. Fires 70 rounds per second. Which is
scared of your plane.
It's hard to fathom 70 of those bullets coming out in a second, right? It's hard to fathom. But it's pretty amazing. When the sun and all the humidity and everything is just right, you can actually see the shock waves coming off of your bullets as you're shooting them. It looks like something out of the Matrix, you know.
Yeah.
And then of course you see the sparkle of whatever you just shot. Any armor or anything like that. We call it sparkle, but when it's penetrating the armor and it just throws sparks everywhere. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that first live cleared heart training exercise is just. I mean, well, I guess I would assume it's more fun to shoot the gun at the front than it is to just press a button and send a missile.
Yes, but the missiles are pretty cool too. So we shot a couple different kinds. We shot rockets, so 1.75 inch rockets. They're about 4 feet long. Those are fun because they're like little just off the sides and the big tubes. You know, I don't remember how many there were in 3s. 7 or 9, whatever. Those are fun because you point at your target, you hold really still, and you either have it on ripple where you push the button and all of them come out, or you can do them one at a time. Yeah. That's fun. The Maverick missile was cool.
What's that?
AGM-65. It's huge. It's about this big around. I think it's about 8 feet long. It's a fire and forget.
Okay.
So you lock onto a tank, at anywhere from 2.5 to 10 miles away. You lock onto it, and it's called a rifle. You hammer down, and that huge missile comes off the rail, and it's fun because there's about half of a second delay. So you have everything lined up. You push the button, and then you look over and you watch it, and it goes, and it shoots off the front. The afterburner on the back of that missile is twice the length, so it's probably 12, 15 foot long flame coming out the back.
Yeah.
And then it goes into what's called G-bias, and it goes and shacks your target. I remember the first tank I hit with a Maverick, it blew the turret off the top, flipped it on its side, and knocked the track off of it too. I still have that video. It was an old B model built in like 1977.
Yeah. They
were just getting all the old missiles they have us use for training. They're like, I don't think it's accurate enough for war anymore, so just go train with them.
Right.
The bombs, I remember dropping my first 500-pound bomb. I was so disappointed.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Just like a puff in the desert?
Yeah. I'm like, I'm expecting this nuke, this mushroom cloud of justice and insurrection. Right. And, I roll in, and I'm just so practiced. And because we practice with these things they're called BDU-33s. I'm sure you've seen I don't even know if they sell them anymore, but back in the day when we were young, they sold the little Nerf footballs that had the tail with the fins on it.
They whistle every time you throw them. Well, they should whistle.
So they have what's called the BDU-33, which is a blue bomb. It's a practice bomb. It's only about this long. It looks just like a Nerf football.
Yeah.
But it has the exact same fall geometry as a 500-pound dumb bomb would. So we go and we practice with those, right? So I roll in, and I've got it wasn't even a tank. It was just the center of a target. I roll in, I got everything perfect, and pickle it off perfectly and as good as I could for being my first one, which probably wasn't very good. But I remember pickling off, then we do what's called a safe escape. So after you drop the bomb, you go into a 5G pull till you're about 60 degrees nose high, and then you roll upside down, and then you watch your impact. And then you pull away, right? And it went off, and it was like, poof. What the hell? It's a 500-pound bomb, but in my mind, I had this expectation of just doom.
Lighten it up.
I was like, yeah. It was cool. And I had 3 more, so then I went,
Just in training, yeah.
popped him off. But
And during this time, Gavin's obviously super young at this time, right? So you don't have any.
yeah, so I dropped my first bomb in 2006.
Yeah.
And the fall of 2000, it would have been the fall of 2006. And
like 2 at this time.
Yeah, he was 2. So so every break that I had, I would go visit him.
Yeah.
Spend as much time as I could with him in between the breaks. There's some of the pictures that we use that I went back and in my flight suit with my A10 patches, and Gavin has his own little flight suit with his A10 patches on it. We did a professional little photo shoot with the two of us, but that was from that same time.
Yeah. Around this time, then, when do you go back? Obviously, you go back overseas, but you're in a different position now. You're flying instead of
So I don't go back overseas again until 2009.
Okay, so for those few years, you're just kind of in training,
just
waiting.
back home doing training missions. Yeah. So I went to Afghanistan in 2009.
Okay.
And I did 2 back-to-back tours. Our Boise went for it was a 3-month deployment.
Okay.
But I think they cut it in half. I don't remember exactly what the dates were now. And then the guard unit that was supposed to take over for us, they were out of Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. They had just been bracked, so that's base realignment and closure. Okay. So they only had about half the pilots required to fulfill the mission. So they asked for other pilots to help. So what I did is when Willow Grove showed up to Bagram, to Afghanistan, I just stayed behind. So the 190th Fighter Squadron that I was with in Boise, they went home, and then I stayed with two other Boise guys stayed with me, and we stayed and they call it rainbows. We rainbowed with the Willow Grove guys, and we did another full-blown deployment.
Yeah,
you bet.
I know you can't share a lot of details, but what is it like being back in a war zone where you aren't just maintaining a plane, like you are flying, you are, doing the work that you've been trained to do, like, because a lot of pilots don't get that chance, right? We don't have wars all the time, thankfully, but you're there and you've been trained to do this, and you are on call, right, for close air support or whatever it is. Like,
well, I'll tell you,
I guess, how does that make you feel in a general sense of like an American to be trained, and does that make sense?
I'll tell you a quick war story which will answer your question. Me and so I'm a lieutenant still, and I'm with a senior captain. Stroke was his call sign, Falsani, and we were out doing about the most complex mission that one could ever imagine. It was wild. We showed up on station to Blackhawks that were trying to get in there to medevac. Everyone was under fire. Everyone was taking fire. Kind of a tall mountain range, and it was at the base of the mountain, if you will. As forward air controllers, which is one of the A10's missions, so Stroke was FAC qualified. He was a forward air controller. So we roll in. Stroke immediately takes the role of FAC. So he holds high. We had F-15s. We had F-18s. So F-15Es, F-18s off of the carrier that had come up from the carrier group. We had Apaches and we had Blackhawks, and then us all in the air at the same time. Yeah. So Stroke is coordinating everything. He's giving me targets. I would roll in. I'd take out targets. I'd come off. He'd roll in. He'd mark a couple targets with some Willie Pete rockets, some white phosphorus rockets for marking. Then he'd tell the F-15 guys, as we held off to the side watching, providing support, those guys would roll in and drop their bombs, and they would come off target. And so he would have them hold west. Yeah. F-18s would roll in, drop, and then they'd go back off to the north, and then the Apaches, and we'd have the Apaches roll in from the south. Yeah. So, and then we would roll back in. So everybody had their quadrant. It was just constant hammering on the ground.
Giant orchestra of,
huge orchestration of firepower trying to get our friendlies out of there.
Yeah.
It was super intense. And then the F-15s and the F-18s bingoed out of gas, so they went back, and then things started to calm down. And then we got a call on one of our emergency frequencies, if you will, that a convoy was about to get attacked. So we calmed everything down with the situation on the ground. We made sure the Blackhawks were safe to medevac the people out. We picked up this new frequency, and they were just on the other side of the mountain. So we made sure everything was good to go there. We popped up and over the other side of the mountain, and then there's this convoy that is receiving word that they're about to get hit with the ways that they do that we can't talk about. So sure enough, we see on this hillside, we see a person that's watching.
Yeah, with a sat phone, calling it in.
Yeah, and an AK and all this other stuff, right? So we see the people that are starting to advance. We're almost what we call Winchester. We're almost out of ammo.
Okay.
So I rolled in. I had one bomb left. It was a 500-pound air burst. The convoy was in. They were all up armored, but it was a big deal to drop an air burst. That means the bomb at about 20 feet above the ground or so, it has a little radar. It senses the ground and it says, "Hey, I'm going to go off right now." And then instead of impacting the ground, it goes off above the ground.
Yeah.
Right. So it's meant for soft targets.
Sure.
And that convoy, they called us in, and we told them on the radio that if we drop this bomb, it could kill them too. And the guy said, "If you don't drop it, we're all dead."
Jeez.
So I roll in, and I remember being more dialed in than I've ever been, and even today, and that was almost 15, 16 years ago, because it's called a pipper, the little dot in my head that I have to aim. It's a dumb bomb. It's not guided. I am putting it where it needs to go. If it would have been off 1/16 of an inch, I would have hit the convoy, right? So just everything had to be so perfect to drop that air burst, and it worked perfectly. So we had to get to do a danger close scenario like that. The guy on the ground has to call us up and physically give us his initials. He's saying, "My initials are Juliet Bravo. That's my God-given name. I'm giving you permission to drop that bomb, even though it might kill me." So we had to get ground commander's initials for the danger close, and it worked. The air burst went right where it needed to go, and it stopped there was a large amount of individuals pocketed that were basically running towards the convoy, and I was able to stop them. To tie this into your question, a short time after that, a stroke Falsani was I don't even remember where he was at now, but a guy that was in that convoy found him and told him that he was able to go home and see his unborn child because we saved his life. That moment when Stroke called me and said, "Dude, I just met one of the guys from the convoy." He was like crying. He was all emotional. He was alive because of what we did. That made every single moment up until that point worth it. All of the hardships, all of the late nights, all of the, all the studying, all the times that I, failed a flight, where the flights didn't go right. All those pieces came together for that moment to where I was able to put that bomb on target and saved a convoy. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, well, at that point, training takes over and you don't have time to think, right? It's just like all that hard work has gone into that exact moment.
That's right.
Because you said, it's down to you. It ain't radars or anything. It is you that's, pushing the button.
No, I'm not saying that the next guy wouldn't have been able to do the same thing.
No, of course not. I agree.
But for me, that made all of it worth it.
Yeah.
For me to go through all of that, to be able to put that, to be able to take that scenario to the completion that we did, it made everything worthwhile. It made it, it made it all worthwhile. And I've told that story to thousands of training students, because when you're going through and you're doing 18-hour days, because that's what it is, 12 hours in the flight room and another 6 hours, studying in your room, preparing for this stuff, and it's hard. Mm-hmm. And you go and you try your best and you fail. You have to get up in the morning and do it again. Telling them a story like that really gives motivation. Like, all right, got it. This is going to suck, but I'm here for a reason. I'm doing this for a reason.
It's real world context.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
So you do 6 months over there then and come back?
Yeah.
Where do you go back to?
So still Boise.
Okay.
Yeah. Came back, and that was in that weird part of the years where the recession was happening and there wasn't a whole lot of money, and the guard base didn't really have money to keep me on orders. So I found a job in Louisiana at Barksdale Air Force Base, where they hired me to bring me on as a assistant director of operations for a green flag exercise. It's a pre-combat spin-up exercise. So basically, the unit, the squadron, the Army, everybody that's about to deploy goes to a green flag, either east or west, and they practice war. Okay. And it's full-blown. The Army is integrated with the Marines, with the Air Force, all of the pieces and parts that you're going to do overseas, we practice here. So being that I have just freshly come back from combat, it was an easy choice for them to pick me up for that. And then I helped coordinate battle exercises, if you will, war exercises for the next 4 years. 2 years there and then 2 years out of Las Vegas. Yeah.
Is that what kind of moved you into just like the instructor side of things and slowly transition into that because you've had the real world experience and ways
it wasn't
to teach
intentional.
People? No, just natural.
It wasn't intentional. It just kind of happened, I guess. Getting at here as the instructor is a whole nother story that we probably don't need to get into, but I was working, I built an operation in Las Vegas at the North Las Vegas airport. I put together a civilian group of 112 individuals, and we built the first, it's called a surrogate predator. Okay. So we took the Civil Air Patrol and we mounted basically a predator drone ball sensor on the left wing, and I trained them how to be drone pilots, if you will, and I stood up an entire squadron there to do that. And one of my sensor operators, her friend was a rich billionaire guy, oil guy out in Tulsa, and he flew down to meet me, and I showed him my operation. It was really quite remarkable. I was the only military person, and I was on a civilian airfield. I had my own hangar. I had a huge budget.
There's your Top Gun moment.
Right. Except I'm working with civilians that I can't pay. It's all volunteer. Yeah. So that brought in its own challenges. But it was, to be entrusted with that was pretty awesome. We had a full bird Colonel Cherry down in Louisiana that sent me out to do that. But through that, I met this oil guy that wanted me to build him a flight operation in Tulsa. Okay. So he flew me out to Tulsa and he showed me his empire.
Is he still alive?
He is. Okay. I have no idea what he's doing.
You don't see him regularly now?
No.
Sounds like we need
story went bad pretty quick. So I show up. I leave the A10 out of Boise. I get up to Vance as a reservist, as a part-time instructor, so that I could be full-time for him because I didn't want to quit the military.
Yeah, sure.
And he, the short of it, he basically lost his company.
Okay. What year is this?
This would have been 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, he lost his company, and the aviation department obviously went away as well. And now here I am in Oklahoma.
Enid,
Oklahoma with a part-time T6 job. Like what have I done?
So you're in Enid. You're with a part-time job in Enid. You don't have this oil gig anymore because this guy's lost his company, and you stay in Oklahoma for a while doing the trainer thing, probably trying to figure out what's going on and where life's going at that point. Fast forward, Gavin arrives. Gavin comes to see you and stays with you, and
Yeah.
now you're a dad, right? Full time.
And now I'm a full-time dad, and I've got a daughter as well. Yeah, it was a struggle. It was always, part-time dad was always fun. We had 2 major vacations a year every year. We always went out and did all the big stuff, which was hard at the time because we had family members and friends who were like, "Gosh, you're spending so much money. You should be, whatever." And because every time that we talk to somebody, we're going back to Universal Studios or Six Flags or Disney World or whatever, or the Keys or whatever, and now I've got a full-time kid who is wonderful, but now I have to take my fun hat and merge it, because I still want to be fun, but I need to merge it more with, all right, man, you're 15 years old and you're behind, and you've got 3 years to get your act together. If you want to be a fighter pilot, you're way behind.
Yeah.
And so the first 2 school years were very, very challenging. Just getting him to do his work right. It was hard. The end of his junior year, we felt like he was really starting to get on track. He was with the junior ROTC detachment out of Edmond North, and the chief master sergeant there, Chief Bowen, was so wonderful with Gavin, and he spent a lot of time with Gavin, a lot of really good mentoring, because Dad can only say so much, but Dad's stupid. Dad doesn't know anything.
Well, it didn't matter how smart Dad is. We just don't want to listen to Dad.
Well, sure.
Right?
And which is funny because I literally did exactly what he wants to do.
Yeah.
So I can tell him exactly where his next footstep needs to take, right?
Yeah.
But it's just the challenge of being a parent, But ROTC really stepped up and they helped him a lot. They offered a flight scholarship. If you got to a certain GPA and assignments and you had all the right accolades, their flight scholarship would pay for your private license.
Okay.
So him and his buddy, Joshua Eckerd, they were working hard on it. The very last their junior year, and they were slowly starting to get their GPAs up and slowly starting to really work towards it. And then we lost Gavin 2 weeks into his senior year. So his senior year, I told him before his first day of school, I sat him down. I said, "All right, Gavin, here's the deal, man. I have been on you for all of your assignments the last 2 years. I have babysat every single assignment, every grade. I've made sure you were doing your work. I've sat you down and I helped you with your schoolwork. No more. It stops here. Your senior year," I said, "you want to be a fighter pilot, your senior year, you need to pick it up and run with it. And I've given you all of the tools. I've given you know what you need to do. You have the path. I will answer all the questions. I will still be there for you. But I even showed him, I'm deleting the school app from my phone that's going to notify me if you're missing assignments. Do I care still? Yes, I absolutely do." And he's like, "Dad, no, I think you should leave that on there. I think you should, because I'm going to need help." I'm like, "No, dude. No, the crutches, which are me, are being pulled away. You've got to stand on your own 2 feet. You need to do it this year." He bought a motorcycle. So he loved. I grew up on motorcycles. My brother and I rode together. We rode motorcycles together as kids, up in the mountains and on the back country in Idaho. And then I had several cruisers over the years. Gavin started out on a little Yamaha YZ 75. I don't remember, 85. It's YZ 85. That we bought from our neighbor that had been sitting it had been sitting for like 10 years. It was full of rats' nests and it hadn't run. And so we took the time on one of his summer breaks before he moved back with me. He bought the bike for like $500 from he had a little lawn mowing business. It's called Gavins Mow, I'll Keep It Low. Had his own business cards and everything. Yeah. It was awesome. But he bought the motorcycle and we restored it together. So I showed him how to take it all apart. We cleaned it, cleaned the engine, put all new filters in it, showed him how to clean all the, the clutches and all that, put it all back together, put new plastic on it, and then fired it up and it ran, right? So he had his first motorcycle, and he would have been 13. I think he was 13. He'd already been he had his own dune buggy, he had his own four-wheeler. We had all the fun stuff, and everything was souped up. Everything that he had ever had, we souped up. So it had the best ignition, the best whatever, right? It was, when you pushed on the throttle, it was gonna haul ass. Yeah. And he was good at it. He was remarkable with his hands. I was told that I was the same way. But anything that he picked up, he could master, as long as it was hand-eye coordination stuff. RC helicopters, RC airplanes, flying airplanes. I had my own airplane, a Blanca Super Viking, and I would take him flying in it, and he would fly. I've got wonderful videos of him flying. We just had a really good time together with all of that stuff. So that motorcycle then gets turned into upgraded from there to a bigger bike. Now we're into a WR250F. So now it's a much bigger bike, electric start. We spend the money on getting it street legal, and he pays for his own endorsement, so he gets his motorcycle endorsement. I'll get all the gear, and now I start riding with him on the roads. I teach him how to ride, right? We do all the back roads and all that stuff. And then the first time we rode into town, we rode into Eddie's in Edmond and had chicken wings. It was our thing, was chicken wings. And then from there, he found a crotch rocket that he wanted, an R6, Yamaha R6. He's like, Dad, I can sell the WR. I've got enough money saved up for this Yamaha. I was like, man, I don't think it's a good idea. I think you need to wait. And he's like, oh, Dad, I promise you everything will be fine. I'll do all the things. I'll practice. I'll go do the defensive driving course, basically for motorcycles. I'll do all that stuff. So he talks me into it. I let him get the bike, and he has it for a year and a half before he's killed on it. The morning that he was in the accident, it was August 25th of 22. Remember, it was a beautiful morning. I was out. I just put brand new headlights in my truck. And one of the things that I wasn't doing with this new school year was waking him up. He had to get himself up out of bed and get himself to school. So I remember I'm out there replacing the headlights, and I'm really excited to show him because he'd love mine. I got this big, huge Dodge Ram, 4-wheel drive pickup, and he loves it. It's a pretty truck. And so I go inside, I look underneath his door, and his light's on. I'm like, all right, sweet. So I pour a cup of coffee. It was one of my things. I'd always bring him a cup of coffee in the morning, and we'd chill for a couple minutes while he was getting ready to go. So I poured him a cup of coffee, and I brought it, and I sat on his bed. He sat up, and I told him, I handed him the coffee, and I told him what I did to the truck, and I said, you want to see it? He's like, yeah, sure. So we go out there and take him outside and show him the headlights, and it was just cool, He's like, yeah, man, those are awesome. Those are neat. And then he goes inside and he takes his time getting ready to go. And my wife Amanda and I we were standing together. He came out and he had his motorcycle gear on. He had the best of the best gear. I mean, I wouldn't let him ride without it. Everything from his shoes. His shoes were race certified all the way up through the armor, and the helmet and the glove, everything. He walked up and it was the best morning that we probably had ever had with him, a school morning. He was just beautiful. His hair was perfect. We just loved him.
Yeah.
And everything inside of me was like, leave. You're going to be late. Go to school. But he took an extra minute for us. And he hugged us and he told us he loved us. That was it. It's one of those things that literally all of the pieces have to come together perfectly, because the lady that pulled out in front of him at the exact moment to where he didn't have any reaction time. I have not watched the video. I'm not going to, but the investigator said he had 0.8 of a second to see her before he hit her. And most of us can't do anything in 0.8 of a second. But he was in his lane, minding his own business, and she pulled out in front of him, and he hit the side of her van, and he went straight down. He died on the scene, but the paramedics brought him back, and I was walking into the Gold's Gym in Edmond, and I got a call. It said Sheriff's Department. I picked up the phone and kind of jokingly said, "All right, what did he do?" And the officer, he said, "Your son's been in an accident, and you need to meet the paramedics at OU downtown." And I remember saying, I said, "Is he alive?" And he just kept saying, "Sir, your son has been in an accident," and he wouldn't tell me. And finally I said, "I need you to tell me if he's alive or not." And he said, "Right now he is, but they're working on him." And I said, "Where are you?" And he told me that he was on the corner of Covell and Kelly in Edmond. So I jumped in my truck and I raced there. I got there right as the ambulance was leaving. So the police officers waved me in behind him. And I followed the ambulance all the way down to OU. And he had 4 surgeries. They took out the lower part of his lung, one of his lungs. They had to remove one of his kidneys. Almost every one of his bones was broken. His spine was shattered. The impact was, as it was so sudden, all of his internals were basically, they were all damaged. And they did multiple surgeries to try and get the bleeding to stop. It took about 32 hours. And at a little after 5 o'clock on the 26th, they hooked him up to a machine because his oxygen level was so low that they were afraid if he wasn't already brain dead that he was going to become brain dead. And it was either he was either going to be brain dead or he was going to bleed out, and we had to get him oxygen. So they hooked him up to what's called ECMO. It's like the dialysis machines that they use for kidneys, but instead of it filtering the blood, it oxygenates the blood. And as soon as they hooked it up and turned it on, it was too much pressure, and he bled out. we were pretty sure what was happening because everyone all of a sudden was frantic. We're in the waiting room and nurses are running back and forth hauling huge crates of blood. And we were fairly certain it was for him. Gavin's mom and stepdad flew down. I called them when I was driving by in the ambulance, and I said, "It looks really bad. You need to come here." And they got here in time. But he was just getting his act together, you know. He had his whole life ahead of him. Scholarship. Yeah, we can talk about the scholarship, right? After he passed, and we had the funeral. We had the funeral in Boise. His ROTC detachment met us at the airport here in Oklahoma City, and they put the American flag over his casket, and they put him on the airplane. And then he's buried at the Veterans Cemetery in Boise because I'm active duty military, and he was under the age of 18. He was able to be buried at the Veterans Cemetery. So there's a plot overlooking the Boise Valley up on the top of the hill. And his headstone has my name on it too, because I'll be buried with him. The A10s from Boise did a flyby. As they were folding the flags, they timed it perfectly. A 2 ship of hogs flew over. So after we buried Gavin in Idaho, we came back and had a celebration of life for him here, so his friends could say goodbye at the Big Life Church campus in Edmond, off of I-35 there. And I got a call. I was in Boise still. We had just buried Gavin, and I got a call from this kid, and it was a text message and a call. This kid kept texting me from North Carolina, and he said, "Hey, I was a friend of Gavin's. I'm so sorry." And he said, I really want to come out to Oklahoma for the celebration of life. And I was so preoccupied, I didn't really think. So I was sure, yeah, of course. I sent him the address. I don't know you. I don't remember you. I've never met you. But I gave him the basic information, and then we moved on. And then this kid walks up to me, big, tall, Viking-looking kid, and he doesn't even reach in to shake my hand. He just embraces me, and he introduced himself to me, and he said that he met Gavin online playing one of their video games when he was 14 years old, and this kid was suicidal. He was going to kill himself, like legitimately going to kill himself, and Gavin talked him out of it. And this kid maintained friends with Gavin, and he flew out to Oklahoma to thank me for Gavin's life, because it saved his. I had so many of his friends tell me these stories. Tell me these stories about this stranger, this kid that would, walk the girl to the car from after work because it was late at night, and to keep her safe, to taking care of bullies for the kids that were being picked on. All the things that I wanted him to be, he was. And I just didn't know it, you know? And after he died, I had so many stories about his heroism, how he saved people, how his energy brought people out of the darkness. And man, that's awesome. It makes me happy, and it makes me even more sad at the same time, because this world is so full of darkness, and it's so full of bad people that it's one of the infinite whys. You know, after he died, why him? Why now? Why? If only, you know, all of the if onlys. Why did I let him get that bike? If only I would have just that one morning, even though I told him I wasn't going to, said, no, man, you're late. Get in your car. You're not driving your bike. You know, all of the if onlys, all the whys. But why would such a beautiful flame be extinguished when the dirt bags are living, right? I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe that I'll see Gavin again. I believe all those things. The whys, the whole God's plan part, all of those things, I don't understand. I won't, and I've come to peace with that. But after all of that, Gavin's, one of the things that he left here was his passion for cars and bikes and airplanes. He loved going to a place called Coffee and Car. Well, that's where you and I met. Yeah. Coffee and Cars. Uh-huh. That was the only thing that would get him up in the morning.
That early, yeah.
Once a month, him and his girlfriend would get in his Mustang, and they drive down to Coffee and Cars at 6:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and get there right when everybody else was. And he loved it. He loved it. And his neighbor, our neighbor, David, he wanted to put on a car show to raise money as a benefit to give us. So we had our first car show out at Pops on Route 66. It was about a month and a half after he died, and it's all kind of fuzzy to me, but the ROTC came out, and they, in their blues, and they presented the flags, and they saluted the car, and they raised money, and they tried to give us that money, and I don't want the money, right? So kind of there on the spot, I'm looking at the ROTC, and I'm thinking about the scholarship that Gavin was working towards. I was like, you know what? Why not put this money towards a scholarship? I don't want the money. So it was right there that we decided to build a scholarship, and we started it like right there. And I picked up the mic, and from the DJ that was doing the thing, and I kind of announced what we were going to do, and just pulling it out of thin air, And there wasn't a ton of money. It was like $2,500, I think, is what they raised. And so I took that, and then I put it into last year's campaign and started the Gavin Black Memorial car show is how it started. And we did our first event last year at Twin Peaks. Of all places, why Twin Peaks? Gavin rented me a brand new Corvette for Father's Day. He had me rent it because he obviously wasn't old enough.
Yeah.
But he's like, "Hey, Dad, I want to rent you this car for Father's Day," and it was very expensive. It was like $500 a day, and I was like, "Oh man, that's awesome. That's way too much money." He's like, "Oh, Dad, it's good. Yeah. It's good." He always say, "It's good." So I said, "All right. That's really cool of you, but how about I split it with you?" He's like, "You sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, with $250 each, that's great." So we rent the car, this beautiful car, we go down, we pick it up together, we drive, and I know, looking back, that part of the reason that he rented me that car was because he knew I'd let him drive it.
Yeah.
And I let him drive it.
Right.
I wasn't supposed to let him drive it. Sorry, Savannah. I'm sure she will listen to this.
Is this a Turo rental?
Yeah, it was. And Savannah is actually selling the car right now. I thought about buying it from her, and I still might. It's still for sale. But on our way back to drop the car off, we stopped at Twin Peaks. One of the things the way that Gavin and I always said goodbye to each other after every one of our visits, I'm talking 95% of the visits, was chicken wings. Yeah. It was our tradition.
Yeah.
It was always Hooters until Hooters became inappropriate. I didn't think that much about it, but I was told it was inappropriate. So we end up at Twin Peaks, and it was so funny. He's like, "Hey, Dad, you mind if I drop you off, on the corner and I go pull the car up front?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, that's cool." So he drops me off, and he goes up solo in the convertible Corvette and backs into the spot, looking all rad. And we go in there, we sit down, we have our wings, we talk about everything. And I'm like, "All right, man, hey, I'm going to leave here a few minutes early so you can pick me up on the corner again." And he's like, "All right, cool. So he gets in the car and he starts it up, revs the engine, boom, 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 and he pushes a button, and the top comes back, and he rolls out slow, and he comes over and makes sure I'm out of the way, and everybody, and I jump in and we blast off, and that was our last meal together. So my other neighbor, his wife happens to give jiu-jitsu lessons to Sam Barnett, which is the owner of Twin Peaks, which is also a owner of Coffee and Cars. So she gets me in touch with Sam. I talk to Sam. I tell him my story. At the time, he was a board director for Warriors for Freedom, which is a veteran organization, right? So he, through all of this, Sam picks us up. I join Warriors for Freedom. Warriors for Freedom gets me into scuba diving as that's one of their things that they do for PTSD people and everything. So, and that scuba diving ends up, doing stuff with my friends out in we went down to Destin and did some stuff there, some diving with Warriors, and then some stuff in the Florida Keys as well. And back to the scholarship though, with Sam, he had us host our first car show with him at Twin Peaks, which was awesome. We had an amazing show, and it was on the anniversary of his death, August 26th of last year. We advertised like crazy and didn't get hardly any traction, but all of a sudden people started bringing their cars in. We didn't have anywhere near the turnout we were hoping for. We had 52 cars show up. We were hoping for 150. But we had an auction where we were selling stuff off, and the auction was going really well. People were coming out of the woodworks offering us things to auction. We had a lady, her name's Joni Moore. I will give her a shout out. She comes up to me, and she says, "This is amazing what you're doing." She shared a story with me about her son. He was shot in the back, and he's a quadriplegic. And he was there, and she said, "I have a house in Cozumel." She said, "Right now, tell your auction guy 7 days for free, or 7 days to auction in my house in Cozumel." What? Okay.
Yeah.
So we did that. She's offering it up again this year, so we'll have another auction for Cozumel this year. We're trying to get their local scuba diving shop, Papa Hogs. We're trying to get them involved in the scholarship to throw in a scuba deal to go with the stay. But Bobcat showed up, and they gave a 3-day rental for an excavator to auction off. Just all kinds of. I auctioned myself off as a hunting guide, to take people out and take them hunting, and I did. I took a 21-year-old kid out hunting, and with that, and it was just wonderful. And like I said, we were hoping we needed 20. I was hoping for 15, and we ended up getting 34.
Wow.
It was remarkable. So we were able to pay 100% of the scholarship for last year, pay all of the bills, because it unfortunately takes money to make money.
Yeah.
And pay all of the bills for last year, pay the budget for this year completely, and start out with like $3,000 in the kitty to go towards this year's scholarship. So right now for this year, all of our bills are already paid.
That's right.
And now we're just fundraising scholarship money. So my vision for this scholarship is not your 4.0 student. They can get scholarships all day long. The vision for this scholarship is someone like Gavin. Someone who just needs a little push. So last year we gave our first scholarship to the kid that was working with Gavin towards a scholarship. He wasn't able to win the scholarship for Josh Eckerd. Yeah, he wasn't able to win the scholarship for the ROTC, but he won my scholarship. And he's now flying with Oklahoma Aviation, and he's about halfway through his private pilot's license. He's just doing great. So the vision for this scholarship is like-minded people to Gavin, people that specifically want to be Air Force fighter pilots, Marine, Navy, I don't care, fighter pilot, right? That maybe had a hard time in the beginning with life, and they're not the 4.0 student. I wasn't a 4.0 student. I was a 3.0 student. But I want to offer someone the chance of a lifetime. So we have an application process, and it's 3. They have to answer 3 essay questions, keep it under 250 words, and they send I've only received 1 application, but I like it. I like this kid a lot. Edmond North ROTC detachment will always get the first scholarship. That's where Gavin was going. They put so much work into Gavin. I want them to have first dibs at the first scholarship.
Yeah.
Any money we get after that will go to, I'll give away as many scholarships as I can. Yeah. It's, this year the scholarships are going to be worth $15,000.
Okay.
So that $15,000 is enough to get you a private pilot's certificate if you work at it. Yeah. So I'm putting some guidelines on it. You have a year to get it done. Because if it takes you any more than a year, it's going to take more than $15,000. Yeah. Because you got to just pound it out. Yeah. Every delay that you have to do another training flight to make up for the delay, and that's just money, right? So you have to be 16 to be able to apply. Minimum age is 16. You have to be able to pass an FAA flight physical, because that's a requirement. And then you have to fill out this essay and send it in. And then my board of my charity board, there's 7 of us, we'll look through all of them and choose who we're going to go with. Yeah. We have our first event at the end of this month. I hope you guys will be out there for that. So March 30th at Classic Chevrolet on Northwest Expressway. We're having a little show and shine. They don't have a whole lot of room, so we got 50 spots that we're going to have pre-registered, hopefully. Hopefully we can fill it up. No auction or anything on this one. This is just going to be kind of a gathering. We'll have this merchandise, some different stuff out there for sale. Of course, 100% of everything goes into the scholarship. And then June 15th is our big event. So June 15th will be at Edmond North High School. The ROTC will be at this event at the end of the month in their blues, doing the national anthem and everything. It'll be, if you've never seen that, it's quite remarkable. They will also be at the Edmond North on June 15th. That's their high school. And on June 15th, we will present, hopefully, plural the scholarships. Yeah. Like I said, I'll pay out of pocket the difference for the first one, and hopefully we can bless it 3 is my goal. So 45,000 is what I'm shooting for this year.
Yeah. How you mentioned kind of the Josh is at Oklahoma Aviation. I assume there's a lot of other schools as well, but like, how's that been received from the school side of things too?
It's been,
And to build that relationship.
it's hard
Yeah.
because when I go to a flight school and I talk to them, they instantly think that I'm trying to get something for free.
Sure.
Which is not. I mean, in a perfect world, gosh.
Yeah.
If we have a flight school that wants to sponsor a single scholarship, man,
reach out.
awesome.
Yeah.
You know, we're a 501c3, so everything it's a tax write-off. They could write off an entire private pilot certificate, and that would be awesome. I don't see it happening, at least not yet, not with any of these smaller schools. But I do need support from other flight schools. Oklahoma Aviation will only take one student. They don't have the ability to take more than that. I've talked to Sundance Flight Academy. I believe that they're going to help me out with student capacity. I'm meeting with Buck's flight school hopefully tomorrow, depending on the weather. I'm actually going to jump in his airplane with him at a Guthrie and fly with him tomorrow, as long as the weather's good. Yeah. And hopefully pick him up as a flight school. But we haven't really decided anything there. But I do need support from flight schools, and if I could find a flight school that would be willing to, even have a cheaper block rate, since I'll be paying, up front, that would be amazing. And worst case scenario, at the end of the day, if they can't give anything, then obviously just the ability to send them a student.
Right.
What Oklahoma Aviation did is they gifted about $2,000 worth of gear for the scholarship. So show at OA, they gifted a very expensive, like $1,200 headset, and then a flight bag, which consisted of all the ground school, and he paid for all of the online ground school training for the student. So if I could get that kind of support from other flight schools too, that would be amazing. You bet.
Yeah. So March 30th, June 16th?
June 15th.
June 15th, the date?
Yeah, March 30th, June 15th. Yeah.
And then for people listening, do you have a website I can send them to?
So I have a link tree.
Okay, I'll put the link to that in the description so people can go straight to that and
you bet.
See what you guys have going on and
awesome.
Buy merch or whatever it is that they however they can support.
No, you bet. Our link tree, if you just type in Linktree, it's you can do that, but it's just Gavin's Legacy. So if you were to go to the Linktree website and just type in Gavin's Legacy, it'll take you to it. Yeah. Otherwise, it's linktr.ee and then / Gavin's Legacy, and it'll take you to our Linktree, which has our professional deck on the top for our sponsors that might want to get on board. We've got a sponsorship donation letter, which kind of explains our mission statement. We've got our flyers on there for the 15th and the 30th, so you can see what our flyers look like. Our application. So if anybody listening, if you got kids or you are the kid that wants to apply for the scholarship, we can get all the money in the world, but if we don't have kids applying for the scholarship, it kind of defeats the purpose, right? Yeah. So we need applications too, and anybody that wants to get involved, whether you're a food vendor, come on out for that. We've got food vendors already set up for both events, but if you guys can come out, any level of support to really remember Gavin, to realize his dream and his goal with this next generation is our mission. Yeah, we want to bless these kids with an opportunity that Gavin didn't get to have.
Yeah. I know it's really still fresh, but I really appreciate you coming out and sharing your story. And that's not easy at all. But thank you, because I'm excited and I'm glad and thankful and grateful and fortunate to have this hour and 30 minutes, however long it's been with you, to talk about it, because I know a lot of people don't get that other than your close friends. So I know Danny's heard this story a lot, and but I really appreciate that. That means a lot, and I'm excited to see it from the ground up.
I appreciate you.
And see where this goes, and help any way I can to connect you to sponsors, whoever it is. don't have the money to give you yet, but I'm happy
Sure.
to use my connections to help with that.
I appreciate that.
You know, I know. I think Wyatt wants to be involved. Who you met at the car show as well.
I did.
And Eliud, obviously, who you guys knew anyway, because you went into his exotic motorsports dealership together. I know he's going to get involved, even if it's just showing up with cool cars.
That'd be wonderful. You bet.
The community here is awesome, especially the car community.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt that this is you're gonna have 3 scholarships this year and more going forward.
You
like
think
I said,
so?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't. Just knowing the people that we know collectively, I think it's going to be awesome. I think the problem you're going to have is people applying for scholarships. We need to get more people to apply for it. But we'll get to that.
Okay.
I'm glad to.
That'll be a good problem to have.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to play a small role in this and want to be involved going forward. So thank you for coming, sharing your story. And for people listening, I'll put the Linktree link down below. They can go check that out and spread the word for anyone who they know, or like I said, if there is someone listening that is in high school that thinks, you know what, this person sounds a lot like me. I'd love that. I'd love an opportunity.
Awesome.
So, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
People listening, thank you so much. We will catch you next episode. Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is presented by Citizens Bank of Edmond. Citizens Bank of Edmond has been serving Edmond since 1901. They pride themselves on investing in the community and are here for all your personal and business banking needs. For more information, go to mycitizens.bank and follow them on Instagram at citizensedmond, as well as go bank there, because I bank there too. It's been a fantastic personal experience for me. I've had my podcast account there now, my podcast business account there now for 4 years now, I think, and it's been fantastic. So definitely worth your time. They're a great group of people, and they're always there to answer the phone when I forget my password, because I seem to forget it daily. So yeah, go to Citizens Edmond and check them out. It's been awesome. This episode is brought to you by the Dog House OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my 2 pups, and the Dog House have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my 2 golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Banks, where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Dog House. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.